Clicks messaging is incredibly simple. Family is more important than work. But I think it actually highlights something relevant to what is happening today. But how does that relate to AI? Well, maybe some people would have figured that one out. Because LLMs function a bit like a universal remote control. In 25 words, you can generate very beautiful images, videos, or even use it to respond to emails. And yes, you might say this is business related, but it happens in personal spaces too, to make themselves seem smarter, better writers, or whatever. But you can sniff it out really easily because you're filtering your soul through a probability matrix, and you're basically losing any idiosyncrasies that you have. And you're essentially becoming like Michael Newman on autopilot, hoping that nobody notices the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Autopilot. More like auto-zombie.
I'm not completely against all generative AI. I do think that it has its place. But then there still needs to be an element of human input outside of something like generate me a script about the Roman Empire that's 2,000 words, and then finding some AI voiceover software to get a voice clip, and then saying generate me a clip of Roman soldiers, etc., until you have created a video. That is slop, and it's such a slippery slope, and it can very easily snowball out of control, which it already has. And that is the danger that Click showed us, deferring ourselves to a machine so we can move from goal to goal. And during his fast forward sessions, Michael becomes a zombie, devoid of all personality, devoid of engagement, and honestly, this is exactly what happens when people use AI to do everything for them.
I didn't even touch the remote.
Yes, sometimes it looks pretty. Yes, it has a nice sound to it, but it's still lacking the part of it that makes it human. It misses the idiosyncrasies of the person who did the thing itself. And then the only idiosyncrasies that are left are from the AI itself. But this is a slippery slope because the more we get used to offloading our cognitive labor, even for more simple things like emails, well, what happens when there is no more cognitive labor for a person to do? And honestly, replacing all cognitive labor is literally the mission of OpenAI. But what would that actually look like? Rather interestingly, or maybe ironically, a TV series that highlights a lot of the problems with modern technology actually probably gave us a pretty good glimpse of how that would look without actually using AI in the episode itself. Yeah, they have covered AI bringing back loved ones to life and so on and so forth, but they actually showed us what it could look like if we remove all cognitive labor. And the episode in question is 15 Million Merits, the episode that was rather humorously a parody of the talent show craze of the 2010s. As well as also being a very generic parody of the world that we live in, where we just keep on trucking so the machines can keep on running and we generate it all for the machine. But it is also a world where all cognitive labor has been removed and humans only use their physical form to earn money. And if you have nothing else to do, why not just generate electricity through a bicycle? Literally, what else are we going to do? People will see that and say, well, we will just need to learn what jobs we can do. There's always been tools to make things easier, more efficient. We just need to adapt. And sure, that is a valid point and a fair criticism, but it doesn't highlight the absolute travesty that AI is not trying to become just a tool. It is an attempt at general consciousness and is being built to be better than a human in all use cases. And if that happens, then humans become the point of failure. And at a certain point, there will actually be no need for a human to exist because the AI will do everything. And so here we are in Black Mirror, riding our bicycles. Probably rather symbolically, because at that point we probably would just function like pets and no doubt the machine would, have fusion or whatever, but every little helps and it beats the living shit out of using fossil fuels, I guess. But what's even more absurd about this is actually how it sort of predicted algorithmic content and unskippable ads and on-demand services. And when I say on-demand, I mean literally everything. Even your fucking toothpaste is on demand. It's the quintessential example of you will own nothing and be happy. Oh, and your clothes are only available for avatars. You don't even have any clothes in the real world. You just get a grey jumpsuit. And the best part is the only vehicle for escape is to become a pop star or a content creator or, a model. It's kind of like raw and unfiltered techno-feudalism. The bike is the farm and it's loaned to you by your overlord so you can till their fields. And even if AI does implode and it doesn't take over everything, this still kind of feels like the logical end goal for billionaires, and was kind of mentioned by Trump a little while ago, with progress occurring quietly. But this is more of a, yeah, but I'll explain what that means.
These freedom cities will reopen the frontier and give hundreds of thousands of young people a new shot at home ownership and, in fact, the American dream.
In 2009, after the Hondurans suffered a coup, they were pretty desperate for some cash. And if they didn't act quickly, they could end up being, well, in a bit of a pickle. So they turned to America, which is where everyone's favorite human race persister came in. Snapping up land for all of their new pet projects, which were called ZEDEs, aka Zone for Employment and Economics. It's a special zone free of regulation of the host country for mega wealthy to conduct their business and sort of do their thing. And one of them was called Prospera. Prospera is also part of something called the Network State, which is an anarcho-capitalist fever dream where they control everything. And it's also backed by tech billionaires that seek to privately run cities with native cryptocurrencies. Of course, the sales pitch is always about freedom, efficiency, but the subtext is more about insulation. These cities are sold as hyper-optimized safe havens from the inefficiencies of democracy and bureaucracy, well, and red tape. Kind of functions like lifeboats for the wealthy when the world starts to sink. You know, if they don't go to the billionaire bunkers beforehand. Either way, Prospera was an autonomous region free of the Honduran government's control on an island off the coast of the country called Roatan, where all services, infrastructure, and housing, basically everything, was built and owned and run by an extremely wealthy subset of human beings. Yes, they had elections for officials, and by the looks of it, it was sort of a paradise, but if you're rich. But what if you're not rich? And I don't know, what if that land is sacred indigenous land? Fuck off, move over, bucko, you gotta let Big Daddy fucking take it, don't you? Isn't it funny how immigration is okay one way but not the other, right? But this is what they had to say about their imperialism. Investors have said that they would not resort to the use of force to claim the right to land to fulfill their desire to expand their charter city, a 58 plot known as Roatan Prospera, to the entirety of the island, home to numerous indigenous communities and beyond. Not resorting to force. Oh, how benevolent. But this is the danger of these projects. It's just, it's colonialism, where we could eradicate even more culture from our world. But as long as it's only their culture and not Western culture, right? It's all in the name of progress. But this is where the line is. Some people just actually don't give a shit about indigenous populations. Fair enough, maybe, but I personally love, well, cultures that are free of Western society and would hate to see any more force from their homes just so billionaires can have a fancy new island. Call me crazy. And when the indigenous communities were asked about this, they said if they really wanted to do something for us, they would have been more transparent and they would have come and sit down with us. Kerry Bennett. Long story short, despite continual prompts from the billionaires to the American government, which essentially amounted to a strong arming of the Hondurans into complying their shady business practices and essentially what amounts to a hostile takeover of an entire island, the Hondurans eventually got sick of the whole thing. But Prospera was sort of like the proving ground for elite freedom cities. But with Trump's desire to make them manufacturing hubs, you can kind of see the logical conclusion. Tedious, manual labor that no one wants to do. And if there's no robots, like that's all that's kind of left for us to do, isn't it? This would be a space where a billionaire or corporation owns an entire city, where all of the houses, all of the land, everything will belong to them. And these are people whose sole metric to societal benefit have been how well they've accumulated money, or in some cases, how well they've inherited money. And if that sounds suspiciously like corporate monarchy, it's because it kind of is. Some might even say that's a good thing, that having a man who's demonstrated an ability to run businesses or companies would be worthy to be a leader of a city. But I disagree with that. A city is not a business. A city is a place for businesses and people to exist. But This is all just actually a throwback to something that has already existed. And if you watch the clip with Donald Trump, he uses a lot of things like frontier. Like, we've been here before. Mining towns. Now, mining towns were a predominant feature of the 18th and 19th century, and they did serve a very useful function, especially for, well, you know, mining. And it was also something the UK dabbled in a bit before. And love them or hate them, those mining towns came with some benefits and problems. You know, they did provide an infrastructure for people to work in mines. It's pretty good for the 1800s, kind of, and they were like relatively well kept, but came with a thing called scripts, and scripts were a big problem, or in the UK's case, they were called trucks. It was a financial system that, well, at least hopefully, started with reasonable intentions, but, well, let's just say it ended up with a lot of people in financial ruin, and there was a whole genre of music that was basically dedicated to it. It ended up becoming like a debt spiral-based monetary system that was basically credit given to workers in these company-owned towns in the form of like an IOU. In theory, it's not the worst idea. They did get money, but they would take out more money because they might have not had enough to cover their things. Because did you know that they would charge more for all supplies in the company store that was owned by the company? Yes, because they were captive. That's the problem. Yeah, that happens when you have a businessman running a city. And these scripts would only be useful in the company store. It had almost no tangible benefit to the rest of society. So they had these means of creating their own currency, captive audience. It's like monarchy. And people just ended up taking out too many scripts, ended up drowning in debt, and they were trapped in more financial servitude. But yeah, those little slips of paper, they were useless outside of the town. You could sell them or trade them, but you were getting pennies on the dollar. And even when they passed laws making scripts into physical tokens with real value, it didn't actually fix the problem, really. Luckily, scripts were made illegal in 1938, but that did not stop people from being paid in this system. Absolutely not. And still some companies today do some similar practices, and some companies still used it all the way up until 1968. In the UK's case, the trucks were such a disaster that in 1831 the UK had to pass the Truck Act, so airtight and strict. When they eventually tried to modernize with payments with checks, they had to rewrite the law entirely again. So freedom cities can be interpreted as the next generation of this idea, and they use freedom in the same way that an egg company uses farm fresh to hijack your brain into making you think that it's a good or even ethical thing, but really is just marketing speak to get you to feel good about something that's actually like reasonably shady. And that's not to say that these are not bad ideas. Like, the idea of this is not terrible. The problem is that these people that will make these things come to reality are not the people that you want in control of these things. And it will become like a first in controls everything, rather than, you know, being able to actually like elect your chosen representative and things like that. But then if we look back to 15 Million Merits, they have their own native digital currency. They all serve the overarching machine, which is like the Freedom City. In the story, each person lives in a small little box that's literally covered in LED TV screens. I mean, like, even today, that's a perfect representation of the world today, where everything we look is a screen. I'm looking at like 2 screens right now. But in the story, the main character Bing inherits 15 million credits and ends up giving a girl he heard singing in the bathroom a shot at a talent show. Bold move. And put himself into financial destitution because of it. Because he wanted to find something real. Abby, the name of the girl, went on this talent show, but instead of becoming a singer like she wanted, she ended up getting whisked away into a sordid streaming service. Ooh, isn't that familiar? Where she became a hardcore model. As a consequence of all of this, Bing is forced to watch an ad of the girl he tried to help, and he was unable to skip it, and subsequently suffered a psychotic break, breaking all of the screens in his apartment. And then he found a glass, resolving himself to do the only thing he can, say his piece live on TV. And that's exactly what he does. He eats out a trash can, skips on every dollar, all in the name of getting to the talent show. And what does he get for all of his trouble? Well, he does say his piece. And, well, that's just the most hilarious point of all of it. By doing that, he gets his own streaming show. In this world, everything is for sale and nothing is real. You own nothing. Everything is given to you, and everything that you own is on a screen. Culture has been almost entirely removed, supplanted by talent shows and lotteries, essentially. The vehicles to create social mobility. And of course, there was like the outrage manufactured by some of the TV shows that they had. But yeah, social mobility is a myth in this world, achievable by only compromising your values, getting incredibly lucky, or commodifying yourself. Bing wanted authenticity, but he became the very thing he despised, and he ended up trapped in a gilded cage, still looking at fake screens in a slightly larger box apartment that had a marginally better screensaver.
Stream offline.
Abby just wanted to be famous in this world, but ended up becoming... well, she ended up in the worst situation possible. It's all a metaphor, especially today, because nowadays people are opting to go into these things. People will manufacture outrage, and they will go into hardcore streaming because they have no mechanisms to survive. And we are forced into this treadmill, trying to do more because we have no means of actually surviving. And if we don't stop for a second, we will sink. And this only gets worse if we continue to defer our cognitive labor and try to take the easy way out and allow AI to become us. Then these jobs that we have, like being a doctor, being a teacher, that actually kind of give life like purpose and meaning, will be replaced by something like riding a bicycle to generate electricity, or sitting in a fucking factory folding boxes all day. Freedom cities will be the ultimate form of this lock-in. If you are in that city, you will work for Tech Corp. You will live in a Tech Corp smart house. You will use the Tech Corp wallet pay system and then pay rent with the Tech Corp native currency. And then you will work a job controlled by the Tech Corp app. The city isn't a place of residence anymore. At that point, it's basically just a subscription stack that makes Netflix, HBO, and YouTube kind of look like chump change in comparison. And quitting one of these services would basically mean leaving the entire ecosystem, making it incredibly difficult to move. Not to mention, you don't know if your currency is going to work anywhere else. Click showed us how that could actually happen. By constantly deferring, we could end up sleepwalking and skipping our way into where what little freedom we have left is taken away. Because if we always take the route of taking the easy way out and deferring everything to AI, we'll end up just relinquishing ourselves to the elite to have all the power. And then places like Freedom Cities will be the logical conclusion, and they'll have all of the control, all of the currency, all of the infrastructure, just everything. So yeah, if we're not careful, we'll end up like Michael Newman, sleepwalking into a world where even what little freedom we have now will be gone. And we'll just end up like Bing, screaming into the void, only for our rage to be repackaged and sold back to us. Or it's a bubble, in which case we all fucking lose everything anyway. In the end, we risk building a future where freedom is just another product behind a paywall.